The drill by now, but we always like to do a recap before we dive into the episode proper. We usually cut that out and host it separately, so if you find yourself on that recap, be sure to check out our full episode discussion. But without further ado, this was episode 53 of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One, titled The Queen of Swords. Excuse me. So we pick up with this episode at Tillover Mill, where Ursulon and Ame have gone to grab Hannah, who is Galt's daughter, and basically extract her from the Citadel and reunite her with her father, whom, if you recall, they rescued in the previous episode. So they grab her, take her back to Ame's cottage via the magical door knockers, and a glorious reunion, of course, and kind of in thanks for this, Hannah gives Ame these gloves, these magical items that basically allow her to have advantage on persuasion checks against constructs. It's at this point that Suvi's ink demons show up. Wait, is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
They showed up at the cottage. I think my own
No,
notes might be confusing.
it's when they go back. They go back to the Citadel.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They drop her off. They go back to the Citadel, and then they run into Suvi's ink demons, who tell them that Suvi has freed them, and they've come as one last favor to basically tell them that Suvi knows they're here and expects them to meet her in the Tower of the Glove. So Enzo, they realize that they have a lot of books with them. The ink demons do. And they're about like art and stuff. And so they quickly piece together that Enzo has plans to free the Kassoff collection, essentially. And so Ame gives him Pomeroy's true name to basically assist in making that happen. And Enzo's like, hey, I suggest you guys get out of here before the witching hour, because that's when we're going to make our move. And it's at this point that we jump perspectives over to Suvi, who is, if you'll recall, in the immediate aftermath of having just seen the Archmage Silence get attacked by Silver, and Silver was killed. So she's still like in her room, but sees that happen. And so she takes this time to gather all of her things, realizing that, like, you know, she probably won't be coming back here. And then goes out to the scene, basically puts on an act of being like surprised at what's going on here. So she immediately runs over to Silence, checks on him, and then goes over to Silver, where she sees that her letter that she had given him was being like extracted by a guard. The guard actually takes that letter over to Silence, who reads it and then burns it. So we don't know for certain necessarily what his reaction to that letter was, but we'll talk more about this in our discussion. But when Suvi is over at Silver's body, she does identify and does sense the fleeting presence of the Chaos spell. So he was under compulsion. She then just gets up, walks away, and heads to a nearby Galathcopter and goes to Gavriel Court. We then cut to her arriving in this court in a beer garden where she finds Sworn, who is heavily drinking. And he basically says, hey, I got your letter. And they have this really like touching but devastating conversation. Sworn reveals he's from Sarasmir, but no, he's not a noble. Just nobles need servants wherever they are. And he basically asks, like, why didn't you ask me to come with you? Like, you didn't think I would? And Suvi's like, I just didn't think it would be fair to ask you, but I'm so sorry. Would you have come? And he says, I'll never get a chance to know. So, basically, they have this conversation. They both realize that he's basically a dead man walking because of his connection to Suvi, the same way Silver was killed. And so Suvi basically like begs him to come with her. Makes a persuasion check, rolls a nat 1. So then they continue to have this like devastating conversation, and Suvi ultimately makes a final check, this time intimidation, being like, hey, this is an order, like get up, we're leaving. And she rolls another nat 1. So it just was not meant to be here. And Sworn, you know, he's getting drunk, getting a bit belligerent. He's not going to come with her. But they have one last little final moment here where Sworn basically does some magic and drops something in her beer, which we find out is basically an antidote to memory modification. So Suvi drinks it, and she starts to regain her memories that she lost from the Gaia spell that Steel put on her. So as those are coming back, she leaves. There is one final like message she sends to Sworn that's like, "Hey, I know you're drunk, like, but when you wake up tomorrow, like, just get out. Like, I'll find you." And classic Brennan Lee Mulligan, his response as Sworn is like 3 intermingled responses because he's drunk. And I won't do it justice here, but it was painful and beautiful. So she leaves alone and heads back to the tower. We then cut back to Ame and Ursulon, who have arrived at the tower themselves. They sneak in by way of broom, like flying into a kitchen window, and basically reunite with Suvi, who makes her way back as well. They basically fill each other in on what had happened, and then Suvi hears her page Yulia coming down the hallway, so she's like, "Wait here," and she goes and heads off Yulia and meets her. And Yulia reports back on the stars of the southern sky, which she had been researching for Sky. And come to find out, it's not a book, but rather it was a project from the Court of Reverie, which is the Court of Illusions. So Suvi says, "Oh my god, you're a genius. Thank you so much." And then basically sends her on her way and returns to Ame and Ursulon. So she then explains to them, and they immediately get to work. Like, Ame pulls out the book, which she still has on her. Ursulon pulls out Wavebreaker, and Suvi casts Identify on this book. And we actually didn't talk beforehand, but I was going to throw it off to you there.
Yeah, sure.
Does that work?
Yeah, so basically the casts Identify and discover that to the suspicion of what we've actually mentioned previously, and also has been mentioned by some other people in the Discord, that this book is effectively a vessel for the curse that originally cursed Ame and Grandmother Ren. They discover this. They also, I don't know if it's right in this moment or a little bit later, but for just sake of brevity, discover that this was similar to the music box. This was handcrafted, so to speak. It was intentionally put together and designed to be able to curse the Witch of the World's Heart. And the only way it could then pass by the wards to get to Grandmother Ren would be for a willing person to take it and deliver it. And we know, obviously, in the very first episode that Suvi willingly took the book, among other supplies, into Grandmother Ren's home and, unbeknownst to her, cursed her. The party then decides to go to the Court of Reverie and try to figure out exactly where this thing was designed, like what are the machinations around it. They basically go on this mini heist, so to speak. They go to the court. Everything's moving very quickly at this point in the story. They find the building that they think it's in. And I think there was even like some dialogue around a Temuri that was the invisibility spell that was like kind of like skulking around, and that they had to figure out how to like get by. All this to say, they make it into the building. They get to like the top floor of it, and there is a room with, I think Brennan described like dangling crystals and sort of like not a console, but like some kind of device that's here that is basically where you can think of as like kind of like a science lab, where wizards have been working, they had been crafting, they had been building, presumably this curse book, for lack of a better phrase, but also this was like sort of the central hub that all of it sort of originated out of. Around this time, or perhaps a little bit before, Task the Spider has also been like skulking around and has been telling Suvi that has gotten something, or that it's been, on its way to Suvi, but had to do like a couple of quick sidesteps somewhere. They basically get confirmed that it was Steel who cursed Ame and Grandmother Ren, that all of this was intentional. And through Task the Spider, I believe Task the Spider had like a huge outpouring of like memories about, or rather details about Suvi's parents. And we found out several episodes prior that her parents had like a hideout. They had like a secret place somewhere in the city, and Task effectively like gives them the data on how they can then go find that place. They hurry over to it. They find themselves, I think it was like behind like a false wall or something. Basically find themselves into the hideout, and we have this very sentimental, sweet, again, outpouring of memories from Task the Spider to Suvi of her parents, like first negotiating with the landlord and, you know, first buying the place. And it wasn't like a first date, but there was also like a memory. Maybe it was like the first date, like kind of like the first, I think, this incredible scene of her dad Stone, who was like finishing a spell. And the whole point of it was like to hear, as sunrise came up, there would be like music playing. And I can't do it justice, but it was a pretty awesome flashback. And that was sort of like the first like sort of romantic moment between him and Suvi's mother. As they continue to sort of like explore the hideout, there's also, if you remember several episodes prior, that her parents also were like, as they played around with magic, they had learned about like the null cleft and like kind of tweaking and changing spellcraft. Well, in particular, Brennan points out that there are markings on a bookshelf of a modified inflict wounds. And Suvi, by like observing this, like gets to then learn this special inflict wound spell where she can then cast it without actually having to physically touch the person. But a characteristic of this is like sort of like this, I think the way I kind of processed it was like the electrical burns that you see on someone.
Ooh,
there's
yeah.
like there's something like that in the bookshelf. And she, if I recall correctly, she immediately recognized this from the last time Steele in the children's stories came to get her from Grandmother Wren, and she had those same scars on her. Yeah. When she said, you know, your parents aren't coming back. So she puts it together in this moment that her mother had been attacked, or had been attacked by Steele and had attacked Steele and had scarred Steele from that encounter. Basically, you know, it's like the whole Agatha all along. It was like, okay, this was Steele all along. And around this moment, right on, you know, plot thread Q, Steele walks in, and, you know, sort of like an awkward pause, and she says, "Who are you going to kill, Suvi?" And that is where our penultimate episode comes to a close, as we look at episode 53, Queen of Swords, before going into our finale. If you're watching just the recap, click the link for our full thoughts on this episode.